It's normal to have a pension plan in today's world.
In fact, it's downright sensible.
You want to be able to provide for yourself in your old age without having to depend on your family, assuming you have family members around to take care of you. So, why are private pensions a bad thing?
In today's episode, we're going to explore why the existence of private pensions is bad for you as an individual, why they're bad for society as a whole, and what we could replace them with. In every society, there are two groups of people. There are those who create more goods and services through their labor than they need to consume in order to survive. And there are those who live off the surplus goods created by other people.
Each society has to find some way to decide who gets to use the surplus that the workers produce, and how much of it they get to consume. On the face of it, a private pension scheme seems like an eminently fair way to decide how to reward our elderly. The more a person pays in during their lifetime, the more comfortably they get to live during their retirement.
Your level of reward is determined by how much you sacrifice. But things are rarely that simple.
For a start, private pensions don't actually operate as a meritocracy. If somebody receives a house from their parents, for example, they're able to pay a lot more into their pension than someone who has to pay rent or a mortgage for decades. Likewise, if someone has an accident and becomes unable to work, or has to cut down their hours to care for a loved one, they simply don't have as much spare money as someone who's able to work full-time for their whole career. Also, if we call the private pension system fair, we're assuming that people are paid for their work, based on the value that they contribute to society.
But we all know that simply isn't true.
During the pandemic, we've seen that the really indispensable people are the hospital workers, the refuse collectors, the supermarket staff, and all the others who provide essential goods and services.
If these people went on strike, the economy would crumble within days. Yet, many of these people are paid poorly. Contrast them to bankers.
The only time bankers have gone on strike was during the 1970s, in Ireland. Sick of regulations getting in their way, they decided to shut down their operations to put pressure on the government. The thing is, the economy kept growing for the 6 months that the banks were shut.
Ordinary people and businesses managed to rapidly create their own credit system. It turned out that people didn't actually need banks all that much.
The structure of our economy might have changed a bit since the 70s, but the goods and services we depend on still aren't produced by financiers. Despite that, who do you think generally manages to build a bigger pension pot, a bank executive or a delivery driver? Any way you look at it, having a private pension system allows those who got lucky during their work years to live in luxury during their retirement, while those people who have to struggle during their productive years are forced into poverty during their old age. Clearly, the system's set up to reward the wrong people, so how can we fix it?
100 countries around the world already have some form of social pension scheme in place.
In the UK, we have the state pension, which you qualify for by paying national insurance during your career.
If we want to give everyone a humane quality of life during their later years, we need only set the state pension at a decent rate and make it universal. But how would we pay for it, you ask?
As we covered earlier, everyone who consumes more than they produce is living off the surplus produced by other people. In our current system, the share of the surplus going to pensioners is shared out unevenly, leaving some pensioners poor and others rich. This only happens because we distribute money to our elderly through a private pension scheme. First, businesses keep some of the surplus that their workers produce, then they distribute it to investors, in the form of dividends. Some of those investors are pension funds, who use the dividend payments, along with profits from their other investments, to pay pensioners. Since people have different-sized pension pots, the money gets distributed unevenly. Instead of having businesses pay out part of their surplus in the form of dividends, we could take it from them by increasing corporation tax, and then distribute it evenly amongst our retirees. If we simply double corporation tax, to 38%, we could use the extra revenue to raise the state pension from around £9,000 to over £14,000.
That increase isn't as unrealistic as it might sound.
Currently, corporation tax in the UK is at a record low of 19%. But it was 52.8% in 1982, and over the past 40 years, the average corporation tax rate has been 30.68%.
Raising it again, to increase the state pension, is the common sense thing to do.
And once we add in the payments both employers and employees already make into workplace pensions, our new state pension rises to just under £18,000.
That's far from giving everyone a luxurious retirement, but in most areas, it's enough to live on reasonably comfortably.
And, just as importantly, it's a secure income. With research showing that 2/3 of Brits are likely to spend the whole of their pension pot while they're still alive, a secure income is nothing to sniff at.
If we fail to make these changes, we know what's going to happen. We'll continue to have large numbers of our elderly living in poverty, and each cold day they'll be forced to make the hard choice between eating and heating.
In an economy where large numbers of people work hard but struggle to pay their rent, and where most of us are one accident or illness away from joblessness and poverty, only the lucky few manage to build a large pension pot. There's no reason that those who got lucky during their childhood and work years should live lavishly in their old age, while the rest of society goes without. It's entirely possible to have a universal state pension, set at a level that allows us to live without fear of poverty in our later years, and it's time for us to demand it.
If you've enjoyed this video, then remember to like, subscribe, and share. And let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time.